Gia's hand trembled as she pressed it against her belly, feeling the impossible flutter within. The physician's words echoed like funeral bells, 9 months. That's all your human heart has left. The child growing inside her wasn't just half vampire, it was feeding on her mortality with every heartbeat, replacing her humanity drop by drop. Lord Kazuki stood in the doorway of their hidden chamber, his ancient eyes haunted by a truth he'd kept for centuries: no human woman had ever survived birthing a vampire's heir. Her time was a countdown. Her love, a death sentence. Before we dive into Gia's impossible journey, I need you to do something: subscribe and turn on notifications, because the stories on this channel explore the darkest corners of forbidden love, where every choice has consequences and every heartbeat might be your last. Now, let's begin. Chapter 1: The Discovery. The bleeding started on the 3rd day of the Autumn Moon Festival. Gia had been grinding medicinal herbs in her father's apothecary when the cramping seized her abdomen like iron fists. She'd collapsed behind the counter, her vision swimming with black spots, certain she was dying. But death didn't come. Instead, something else did, a whisper in her mind, soft and insistent, like a child calling for its mother. Mother, mother, hungry. She'd stuffed cloth in her mouth to muffle her screams. By sunset, she knew. By midnight, she'd confirmed it with 3 separate divination rituals her grandmother had taught her. By dawn, she was standing outside the obsidian gates of the Shadow Palace, demanding an audience with the one being who could give her answers. Lord Kazuki. The vampire emperor who had ruled the northern Shadow territories for 8 centuries. The immortal lord who had saved her from bandits 3 months ago, whose touch had burned like ice and fire, whose kisses had tasted of moonlight and danger. The creature, she'd given herself to in a moment of reckless passion that had felt like destiny. The guards tried to turn her away. The Lord does not receive commoners, girl. Go back to your village before. Tell him Gia is here, she'd said, her voice steady despite her terror. Tell him I'm carrying his child, and that I'll burn down this entire palace if he doesn't face me. The temperature dropped 10 degrees. The gate swung open with a sound like breaking bones. Lord Kazuki stood in the courtyard, his figure silhouetted against the rising sun he should not have been able to withstand. His robes were the color of midnight, embroidered with silver dragons that seemed to writhe in the morning light. His face, beautiful and terrible, was expressionless. Gia. Her name on his lips sounded like both prayer and curse. You should not have come here. I'm pregnant. The words came out harder than she'd intended. 3 months. And something's wrong. She watched his composure crack, just for a heartbeat, before he closed the distance between them with supernatural speed. His hand hovered over her belly, not quite touching, and she saw something flicker in his crimson eyes. Fear. Inside, he commanded, his voice rough. Now. The palace physician was a woman older than empires, her skin like parchment, her eyes milky with cataracts that somehow saw more than sight ever could. She'd placed cold, skeletal hands on Gia's abdomen and gone perfectly still for 3 agonizing minutes. When she finally spoke, her voice carried the weight of ancient sorrow. The child feeds, my lord. As all vampire offspring must. But this mother. She turned her cataract gaze toward Gia. This mother is human. Mortal. Fragile. What does that mean? Gia demanded, even as Kazuki's hand tightened on the back of her chair. The physician's expression was pitiful. It means, child, that you have 9 months before your human heart stops beating forever. The pregnancy will transform you, slowly, painfully, incompletely. You will become something caught between 2 worlds. Neither human nor vampire. Neither living nor dead. The room tilted. And the baby? Kazuki's voice was barely a whisper. Will likely kill her in the process of being born. Your kind's infants are strong. Hungry. This girl's human body will not survive the delivery. It has never survived. Not once in 800 years. Gia's breath came in short gasps. You're saying I'm going to die? No. The physician's smile was sad. I'm saying you're going to die and live simultaneously. Your human heart will stop. But something else might start beating in its place. Or nothing will. The outcome is uncertain. Kazuki had gone perfectly still, that eerie, predator stillness that marked him as another. There must be another way. A spell. A ritual. Something. There is nothing, my lord. The physician began packing her instruments. You have lain with a human and created life. Now you must both pay the price for that transgression. The child will take what it needs. The mother will give until there's nothing left to give. That is the law of your kind. She left them in suffocating silence. Jia stared at her hands, hands that would hold a child in 9 months, if she lived that long. Hands that were already beginning to feel cold at the fingertips, as if her body was already starting to die from the extremities inward. Kazuki. Her voice cracked on his name. What do we do? The vampire emperor, ancient, powerful, feared across 5 kingdoms, looked at her with eyes full of helpless rage. We survive, he said. Both of you. All of us. I don't care what the laws are. I don't care what's never been done before. You will not die, Jia. I won't allow it. But they both heard what he didn't say. I don't know how to stop it. Chapter 2, The Transformation Begins. The first physical change came on the 7th day. Jia woke to find her reflection wrong. Not dramatically, not enough that anyone else would notice, but she knew. Her eyes, which had always been deep brown like river stones, now held flecks of crimson when the light hit them at certain angles. And her skin, once warm with the flush of life, had taken on a porcelain quality that looked beautiful and corpse-like all at once. Kazuki had moved her into the east wing of the Shadow Palace, into chambers that overlooked the moon gardens where night-blooming flowers opened only after dark. He'd assigned servants, half-vampire attendants who understood the delicacy of her condition, and brought in scholars from across the empire to research any possible solution. But research took time. And time was the one thing Jia didn't have. You need to feed, Kazuki said on the 10th night, watching her push away another untouched meal. I'm not hungry. It was true. Food had started to taste like ash in her mouth. Only one thing called to her now, the scent of blood. She could smell it everywhere, in the servants' veins, in the kitchens where meat was prepared, in the copper tang that seemed to pulse beneath Kazuki's skin whenever he was near. It terrified her. The child is hungry, he corrected. And what the child needs, it will take from you. If you don't eat properly, you'll weaken faster. Properly. She laughed, bitter and sharp. You mean blood? You want me to drink blood? I want you to survive. He crossed the room, kneeling before her chair so they were eye level. His hand came up to cup her face, thumb brushing the dark circles that had formed beneath her eyes. Your human food won't sustain you anymore. The transformation has already begun. Fighting it will only make you suffer more. Jia turned her face away, shame burning in her chest. I'm becoming a monster. You're becoming my child's mother. His voice was firm. There's no monster in that. Only survival. Only strength. She wanted to believe him. God, how she wanted to believe him. Show me, she whispered. Show me how. Kazuki had led her to his private chambers, a room she'd only been in once before, on the night that had created this impossible situation. He sat in a high-backed chair and rolled up the sleeve of his robe, exposing the pale skin of his inner wrist. Vampire blood is different from human, he explained, his voice taking on a teaching quality. It's richer. More potent. And it won't harm you the way human blood might. The child already carries my essence, this will feel natural to it. To you. Jia stared at his wrist, at the blue-black veins visible beneath translucent skin. Her mouth watered. Her stomach clenched with a hunger she'd never known. I don't know if I can. You can. He guided her closer, until she was kneeling between his knees, his wrist inches from her lips. Trust yourself, Jia. Trust me. She'd been terrified she would hurt him. Terrified she would become the thing she'd always feared. But when her lips touched his skin, when her teeth, sharper now, she realized with shock, pierced his flesh, there was no violence in it. Only relief. Only rightness. The blood that flowed onto her tongue was cool and sweet, tasting of winter nights and ancient forests and something indefinably him. It spread through her body like liquid starlight, warming her from the inside, filling the hollow ache that had been growing for days. The baby, their child, stirred in her womb. Content. Fed. Kazuki's other hand tangled in her hair, gentle and possessive all at once. "That's it," he murmured. "That's right. Take what you need." When she finally pulled away, gasping, his blood on her lips, she expected to feel revulsion. Instead, she felt alive for the first time in weeks. "Better?" he asked, wiping a drop of blood from the corner of her mouth with his thumb. She nodded, unable to speak. He smiled, a rare, genuine expression that transformed his austere face into something almost human. "Good. We'll do this every night. As often as you need. I told you, Jia, I won't let you die. Even if it means giving you every drop of blood in my body." It was the moment she understood, she wasn't just surviving this pregnancy. She was falling in love with the father of her child. Deeply, irrevocably, impossibly in love. Chapter 3, The Vampire Council's Decree. 3 months into the pregnancy, the Vampire Council summoned them both. Jia had heard stories of the council, 13 ancient vampires who had ruled the Shadow Territory since before human kingdoms existed. They convened once every 50 years in the Obsidian Hall, a chamber carved from pure volcanic glass that reflected everything and revealed all truths. She'd never imagined she'd stand before them, let alone as the subject of their judgment. The council members sat in a semicircle on thrones of black stone, their faces ageless and impassive. At the center sat Lady Yuki, the eldest, a woman who had been old when the first emperor of China took the throne. "Lord Kazuki," Lady Yuki's voice echoed through the hall like wind through a tomb. "You have broken one of our most sacred laws. You have impregnated a human woman, knowing full well the consequences." Kazuki stood with his hand on Jia's lower back, a subtle claim of protection. "I have broken no law. The law forbids turning humans without consent." Jia chose this path with full knowledge. She chose nothing. Another council member, Lord Takashi, slammed his fist on the armrest of his throne. "She is a victim of your carelessness. Human women cannot survive vampire births. She will die, and the child will likely die with her. You have created suffering where there needed to be none." Jia felt her hands ball into fists. She'd been silent long enough. "I am not a victim," she said, her voice ringing clear despite her fear. "And I am standing right here. If you want to judge this situation, judge me too. I knew what Kazuki was. I chose him anyway." The council members turned their ancient gazes on her, and she felt the weight of centuries of power pressing down like a physical force. Lady Yuki tilted her head, studying Jia with an expression that might have been curiosity or contempt. "You are aware that no human has ever survived birthing a vampire's child? That your body is even now dying, cell by cell, to accommodate the creature growing within you?" "I'm aware. And yet you persist in this folly." "It's not folly." Jia stepped forward, out of Kazuki's protective reach. "It's love. It's a choice. It's my body and my life, and I choose to give both for my child. Whether you approve or not." Silence stretched like spiderwebs across the hall. Then Lady Yuki smiled, a cold, terrible expression. "You have spirit, human. I can see why Kazuki chose you. But spirit will not save you when the child tears its way out of your womb. Spirit will not restart your heart when it stops beating. Then what will?" Jia demanded. "There has to be something. Some way." "There is one way." Lady Yuki's eyes glittered like black diamonds. "But it requires a sacrifice that I doubt even your Lord Kazuki would be willing to make." Kazuki went very still. "Name it." "A complete blood transfusion. You would need to drain yourself nearly to true death, giving her every drop of your ancient blood, so that when the child is born, she has enough vampiric essence to survive the transformation. But doing so would leave you vulnerable. Weak. Possibly unable to defend yourself or her if enemies came calling. And you have many enemies, Lord Kazuki. Many who would love to see you have fallen." The implications hung in the air like poison. Kazuki would have to choose, save Jia and risk his own death, or preserve his power and let her die. Before he could speak, Jia grabbed his arm. "No. Absolutely not. I won't let you." Done, Kazuki said, his eyes never leaving Lady Yuki's face. I accept your terms. Kazuki. He finally looked at her, and the intensity in his gaze stole her breath. You think I care about power? About enemies? You are carrying my child, Jia. The first child I've conceived in 800 years of existence. The first woman I've ever loved. There is no choice here. There's only you. Jia's eyes burned with tears she couldn't shed, her tear ducts had stopped producing moisture weeks ago, another small death among many. Lady Yuki rose from her throne. Very well. When the time comes, we will oversee the transfusion. But know this, Lord Kazuki, if you die in the process, the child becomes property of the council. We will raise it as befits vampire royalty. The human will have no claim. She's the child's mother. She's a half-turned mortal with no power, no title, and no protection without you. Lady Yuki's smile was cruel. Those are our terms. Accept them, or condemn her to death right now. Kazuki's jaw clenched. I accept. Jia now faces an impossible reality. The man she loves is willing to die for her, but if he does, she'll lose both him and their child to the council. What would you do in her position? Would you accept the sacrifice, or find another way? Leave your thoughts in the comments, I want to know what you'd choose. Chapter 4, The Silent Months. The pregnancy advanced like a beautiful nightmare. At 5 months, Jia could no longer walk in sunlight without her skin blistering. At 6 months, her heart began skipping beats, not failing yet, but stuttering, as if it was forgetting how to be human. At 7 months, she woke one morning to find her nails had fallen out overnight, replaced by something harder, sharper, more claw-like. She was dying by degrees. Becoming someone else entirely. But in the spaces between horror, there was unexpected joy. Kazuki had taken to spending every night in her chambers, his hand resting on her swollen belly, feeling their child move. The baby was active, impossibly strong, and sometimes Jia could swear she felt tiny hands pushing back against her father's touch, as if already recognizing him. Have you thought of names? She asked one night, lying in the nest of silk pillows he'd arranged for her comfort. Names. He looked startled, as if the thought hadn't occurred to him. Well, yes. We can't just call them the baby forever. He was quiet for a long moment, his fingers tracing idle patterns on her belly. In my culture, names carry power. To name a child before it's born is to invite fate's attention. But his hand stilled. If the child is a girl, I would name her Yumi. It means, beautiful reason. Because she would be the reason I found something beautiful in 8 centuries of darkness. Jia's throat tightened. And if it's a boy? Ren. Lotus. Because lotuses bloom in mud and water, transforming something murky into something pure. That's what this child is, transformation. Redemption. She laced her fingers through his. Yumi or Ren? I love them both. And you? He asked softly. What would you name our child? She smiled. I'd name them Hope. Because that's what they are, aren't they? Proof that something impossible can still happen. That love can create life even when all the rules say it shouldn't. Kazuki leaned down and pressed his lips to her forehead, a gesture he'd done 1,000 times, but which now carried the weight of everything unsaid. Hope, he murmured against her skin. Yes. Let's call them Hope. At 8 months, disaster struck. Jia woke in the dead of night to find her bedsheets soaked with blood. Not the small spotting she'd experienced before, but a hemorrhage, dark and thick and wrong. She tried to scream for help, but her voice came out as a whisper. The baby wasn't moving. Her heart was barely beating. This was it, she realized with crystal clarity. This was the end. Kazuki found her minutes later, drawn by some instinct or bond she didn't understand. His face went white, actually white, all the blood draining even from his undead features, and he gathered her into his arms with a gentleness that belied his panic. No, 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 he was chanting, even as he bit into his own wrist and pressed it to her lips. Drink, Jia. Drink, damn you. Don't you dare die on me. Not now. Not when we're so close. But his blood wasn't working. She was too far gone. The baby had taken too much. The transfusion, she managed to gasp. Do it now. Please. It's too early. You're only 8 months. The child's not ready. The child will die if you wait. She grabbed his collar with failing strength. And so will I. Do it now, Kazuki. Save our baby. She saw the moment he broke. The moment the ancient, powerful vampire lord shattered into just a man terrified of losing everything that mattered. I love you, he said, and she realized it was the first time he'd said the words out loud. I love you, Jia. I should have said it every day. I should have. I know. She managed to smile. I've always known. Now save our child. Please. He kissed her, desperately, tenderly, and then he was gone, shouting for the council, for the physicians, for anyone who could help. The last thing Jia heard before darkness claimed her was her own heart stuttering one final time, and then stopping. Completely. Forever. Clapperboard Chapter 5, Death and Rebirth. Jia's human heart stopped beating at 3:47 in the morning on the first day of winter. For exactly 4 minutes, she was dead. The physicians would later say those were the most critical minutes in vampire transformation history. Because in those 4 minutes, while Jia's mortal body lay cooling on blood-soaked sheets, Kazuki was draining himself dry into her veins. The council had gathered, all 13 ancient vampires standing witness to something that had never been attempted before. A complete transfusion. One life poured entirely into another. Kazuki knelt beside Jia's body, his wrist slashed open, blood flowing in a steady stream into the surgical incision the physicians had made in her chest, directly over her silent heart. He was speaking, a constant, desperate stream of words. Come back. Come back to me. Feel my blood. Take my strength. Take everything. Just come back. His skin had gone gray. His eyes, usually bright crimson, were fading to dull pink. He was dying, actually, truly dying, giving everything he was to the woman he loved and the child he'd never met. Lady Yuki watched with an unreadable expression. Enough, Lord Kazuki. You'll kill yourself. That's the point, he rasped, not stopping. The child. We'll have a mother, he gritted out. That's all that matters. At minute 3, Jia's body began to convulse. At minute 4, her back arched off the table. At minute 4 and 17 seconds, something in her chest moved. Not her heart, that muscle was dead, transformed into something else entirely. But something deeper, something fundamental, woke up. Her body drew in a breath that sounded like breaking stone. Her eyes snapped open, and they were pure crimson, the deep, ancient red of Kazuki's oldest blood. And then she screamed. Because the baby was coming. The birth took 2 hours and nearly destroyed the room. Vampire infants, it turned out, were not born so much as they emerged, with strength and hunger and a desperate need to feed immediately. Jia's transformed body was able to withstand what would have torn a human apart, but it was still agony unlike anything she'd ever imagined. Kazuki, barely conscious, drained nearly to true death, held her hand through every contraction, every scream. He'd given her everything, and now he could only watch as she brought their child into the world. Almost there, the head physician encouraged. One more push, my lady. Don't call me lady, Jia snarled through fangs she didn't remember growing. I'm still just. The baby was crowned. And the world held its breath. One final push. One final scream that shattered every window in the chamber. And then, crying. High and strong and absolutely furious at being born. It's a girl, the physician breathed, wondering in her ancient voice. A healthy, perfect girl. They placed the baby, slick with blood and already wailing with impressive lung capacity, on Jia's chest. She was tiny but fierce, with a shock of black hair and eyes that flickered between human brown and vampire red. Yumi, Jia whispered, touching her daughter's face with shaking hands. Her name is Yumi. The baby latched onto her mother's breast immediately, feeding with the same desperate hunger that had sustained her through 9 months of impossible pregnancy. And Jia felt her new heart, this strange, powerful thing that beat to a different rhythm than before, swell with a love so fierce it almost hurt. She looked at Kazuki, who was staring at their daughter with an expression of absolute awe. "You did it," she said softly. "We did it." He laughed, a broken, relieved sound, and kissed her temple. "You impossible woman. You survived. We all survived." Lady Yuki stepped forward, and for the first time in recorded history, the ancient vampire's expression was soft. "A miracle," she murmured. "In 800 years, I never thought I'd see this day. Does this change things?" Jia asked, suddenly afraid. "Your ruling about the child is void." Lady Yuki waved a dismissive hand. "Lord Kazuki lived. You lived. The child is yours, as is right. Though." She smiled slightly. "I expect we'll be seeing much more of you both. This child is special. The first of her kind. She'll need guidance. She'll need her parents," Kazuki said firmly, finally finding his voice. "That too." Lady Yuki inclined her head. "Rest now. All of you. You've earned it." As the council filed out, leaving them in the ruined chamber with their newborn daughter, Jia finally let herself relax. She was no longer human, her reflection would never show her old face again. Her heart beat to a new rhythm, and she'd need blood to survive. But she was alive. Kazuki was alive. And Yumi, perfect, impossible Yumi, was alive too. "I love you," Kazuki whispered, holding both of them close. "Both of you. More than 8 centuries of existence could ever prepare me for." Jia smiled, feeling her new fangs press against her lip. "I love you too. Even though you've made me a monster." "You're not a monster." He kissed her softly. "You're the mother of my child. You're my mate. You're the bravest person I've ever known." "Flattery won't get you out of diaper duty," she teased. He laughed, genuinely laughed, and the sound was more beautiful than anything she'd ever heard. Outside, the sun was rising on a new day. A day neither of them could walk in anymore. But that was okay. They had centuries of nights ahead of them now. Centuries to raise their daughter, to love each other, to prove that impossible things were only impossible until someone was brave enough to make them real. Yumi stirred against Jia's chest, making a small sound of contentment. "Welcome to the world, little one," Jia whispered. "You have no idea how many rules you broke just by being born." Kazuki's hand covered hers, both of them touching their daughter's tiny back. "She's perfect," he said. "She's ours," Jia corrected. And in that moment, with her transformed body, her vampire mate, and her impossible daughter, Jia realized something profound: she hadn't lost her human heart. She'd just found a bigger one. One strong enough to love through death itself. One that would beat forever. 5 years later. The moon gardens were in full bloom when Yumi took her first successful flight. She was 5 years old, appearing closer to 8 in human terms, as vampire children grew faster, with her father's sharp features and her mother's warm smile. She'd been practicing for weeks, climbing to higher and higher ledges, much to Jia's terror. "I can do it, Mama." Yumi called from the top of the garden wall. "Watch. Please don't kill me with worry before I'm even a decade old," Jia muttered, but she was smiling. Kazuki stood beside her, his hand resting on the small of her back, a gesture that had become a habit over the years. "She's fearless. I wonder where she gets that." "Definitely from you," Jia said dryly. "I was thinking of her mother, who demanded an audience with a vampire emperor while pregnant and terrified." Before Jia could respond, Yumi launched herself off the wall. For a heart-stopping moment, she plummeted, and then her small body seemed to catch the wind, to dance with gravity itself, and she was flying. Not well, and not far, but flying nonetheless. She landed in a heap at their feet, grinning widely. "Did you see? Did you see?" Jia scooped her up, pressing kisses to her daughter's face. "I saw. You were magnificent. Terrifying, but magnificent." Kazuki knelt beside them, his expression proud. "You're getting stronger every day, little lotus." "That's because I have the strongest mama and the strongest papa," Yumi declared with the absolute certainty only a 5-year-old could muster. Jia met Kazuki's eyes over their daughter's head, and in that look past everything they'd survived, the impossible pregnancy, the near death, the transformation, the countless nights of learning how to be parents to a child who was the first of her kind. It hadn't been easy. There had been setbacks, nights when Jia grieved her human life, days when Kazuki struggled with the vulnerability he'd accepted by loving them. But they'd survived. More than survived, they'd thrived. Race you to the reflecting pool, Yumi announced, wiggling free and taking off with supernatural speed. Jia laughed, grabbing Kazuki's hand. Come on, old man. Don't let a 5-year-old beat you. I'm 800 years old, he protested, but he was already running. As they chased their daughter through gardens that bloomed only in darkness, under a moon that had witnessed their entire journey, Jia sent a silent thank you to whatever force had brought her to that moment, pregnant, terrified, and impossibly in love, 9 months before her human heart stopped forever. Because yes, that heart had stopped. But the one that grew in its place, vampire strong, love fierce, and endlessly brave, beat with a rhythm that would last centuries. And that was more than enough. That was everything. Jia's human heart stopped, but her story. That's just the beginning. If you love this journey through impossible love and even more impossible choices, subscribe now, because every week we bring you stories where the stakes are life and death, where love defies every rule, and where the impossible becomes inevitable. Hit that notification bell, and let me know in the comments, would you have chosen transformation for love? Or would you have walked away? I'll see you in the next story, where the darkness is deep and the love is deeper.